Hi, everyone. This is Gary Wilson, and welcome to this week's live Investor Agent webinar, training webinar. This week we have, backed by popular demand, Seth Green, who's going to talk to us about podcasts. And just briefly, again, he was on last month talking about Facebook, and we got great reviews on that, and people enjoyed it, so we brought him back. So, Seth, thank you very much. And you may want to do another intro, even though a lot of these folks are familiar with you. There's a lot of new folks. Could you please fill us in a little bit about who you are or why you're here, and I'll just turn it over to you, and let's go ahead and get started. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Awesome.
I have some slides about my bio, but let's go ahead and dive right in and show your folks how to get impossible to reach decision makers to seek them out, how to write a book without writing a book, and how 20 minutes a week can get 20 people referring you business. So you are about to discover the exact system that I used for myself, and then it worked so well we started testing it for our clients, and it worked so well for them that we opened it up to the general public, and Gary asked me to share it with you. So we're going to go ahead and get right into that. And this particular system is around our podcast book marketing model. And I don't want to assume anything, so for those of you who don't know, a podcast is like a radio show on your phone. Now, why you'd want to have a radio show on your phone, first of all, no one else in your market most likely is doing it. And second of all, there are over 1 billion people listening to podcasts right now. I will shamelessly say I have a top-rated podcast. If you search iTunes for direct response marketing, I have about 66% of the real estate. It's hard to find anybody but me for direct response marketing. So I highly suggest you subscribe to our podcast. It is free. We give away tons of great marketing content on it, and I look forward to hearing your feedback on that. Now, there are 1 billion people listening to podcasts right now, but that number is about to triple in the next 5 years. And the reason for that is what you're looking at right now on your screen is something called Apple's CarPlay. So Apple spent billions and billions of dollars to get a deal with every major car manufacturer. So when you go get your next new car, this is what your interface is going to look like. And you'll see that purple icon right in the middle is the Apple Podcast icon. It will be a native application, which means you cannot delete it from your car, even if you want to. So even if you don't have an iPad, iPod, iPhone, or iMac, you will have an iCar whether you like it or not. So right now there's 1 billion people listening to podcasts. In the next 5 years, as everyone turns their car over, that number will go to 3 billion people. So your ideal prospects, your ideal clients, your ideal tenants, your ideal renters are all going to be looking for you. And if the two most used applications on a smartphone other than social media are the podcast app and the Amazon app. So if you don't have a podcast and a book, how are those 3 billion people going to find you? So that's why I kind of think the time is now. This is the new ground floor of podcasting because Apple has put so much money behind it to make sure it takes off. Gary asked me to tell you a little bit about who I am and why you should listen to me. I have written 5 best-selling books and my 5 Amazon bestsellers, and my 6th book just got picked up by Morgan James Publishing, so I'm looking forward to having a New York Times best-selling book as well. If you know who the grumpy guy on the right is, that is Dan Kennedy, the #1 highest-paid marketing consultant on the planet, and he was nice enough to have me be the only person in history who's been nominated back-to-back 3 years in a row for his prestigious Marketer of the Year award. I've also been featured on real media like the Wall Street Journal, CBS, CNN, NBC, CBS Money Watch, Boston Globe, Miami Herald, and a whole bunch of others. So that is the short version of why you should listen to me. But it didn't always start. I didn't start out that way. I didn't start out as a nationally recognized marketing guru, so to speak. I started out. I went to Syracuse University. I was an Orangeman, and my original undergraduate degree was in acting. And my life goal at 18 was to be a Broadway star. And you sort of see how that worked out. And I'll tell you the reason why it didn't work out is because my senior year, two of my friends and I decided to produce a interactive murder mystery musical. And we formed a student organization. We went to the student government. We gave them our budget. They gave us the money, and we were good to go. And I was a producer. 6 weeks before opening night, though, I got a phone call that said, this is the student government. We need to talk. You need to come in for a meeting tomorrow. And I said, uh-oh. Because if anyone ever says we need to talk, it's usually bad news. You know, if your girlfriend or your significant other says we need to talk, it means they want to be friends. You know, nobody ever says we need to talk, I love you. If your boss says we need to talk, it's usually not you're getting a raise. It's usually we don't need you anymore. So the student government said we made a mistake. The bylaws of Syracuse University prohibit us from giving a first-year organization this much money. We need half of your money back. And I said, well, you know, we're 6 weeks from opening night. I've got sets being built. I've got costumes being sewn. I've got rights to pay. You can't have it back. And they said, oh, no, 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 no. You don't understand. We're not asking you. We're telling you. We've already taken the money from your student bank account. We're just letting you know so that you don't freak out if you go see your balance is cut in half. And so my friends and I went back to my apartment and said, you know, what are we going to do now? And, you know, we can't produce the show on half the money. It's just not feasible. And if you've ever seen the movie Top Gun with Tom Cruise, you'll remember this guy, his admiral on the aircraft carrier. And he says to Tom Cruise, son, your ego's writing checks, your body can't cash. And that's what I did. I said, guys, I got this great idea. I got all these pre-approved credit card applications on my dining room table. Why don't I fill them out, and I'll charge the budget for the show that we're missing. I'll charge half the budget. And we'll sell tickets for the show. We'll sell admission, and whatever we don't make back at the end, you know, you guys will get credit cards, and we'll split 3 ways. And they all said, that sounds like a great idea, Seth. Go for it. Except I knew nothing about marketing. So the only people who came to the show were the friends of everyone and the parents of everyone who was in the show. That was it. So I went to my friends and I said, you know, we got all this debt. You guys got to go get credit cards. We're graduating. And they went to their parents and asked for permission to do this. And their parents, of course, said no, which is what my parents would have said had I asked, which is why I didn't ask, because they would have talked me out of it. So I got stuck with all the debt. And I had, you know, no way to pay it back. And I had to go bankrupt. I had to go Chapter 7. And it was one of the worst days of my life. I was sitting in the bankruptcy trustees, you know, it's bankruptcy court, and the trustee says, you spent how much money on what? A musical? Explain this to me. So I told him the story, and he said, son, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive, and I thought I had seen everything. But this is a first for me. I've never seen anyone go bankrupt over a musical before. I can't wait to tell the other trustees at happy hour about this one. And I said, yes, what I said, thanks. You know, this is my life, but I'm glad you think it's funny. So I decided that maybe this producing acting thing wasn't for me. I had just gambled a whole bunch of money that I borrowed on something I knew nothing about. So I thought, you know what, maybe instead I'll become a financial advisor. I know, it seems like a logical career choice at the time. And I said, I'm going to, you know, teach people how not to go bankrupt. So I went to work for a Fortune 500 financial services company. There were 6,700 reps there. I started out one up from the bottom because my branch manager said, you're going to go out and make 300 cold calls a day and interrupt strangers and ask them for money, and that's what you're going to do to get a client base. And I didn't know any better, so I listened. And it kind of, if you've ever made cold calls for a living, if you've cold called FISBOs or if you've cold called, you know, whatever you've done, it sucks. It's not an easy way to make, or a fun way to make a living. But in my spare time, I am a professional magician. And I was reading a magic magazine. Yes, magicians have trade journals. And there was a full-page ad for a marketing course for magicians. And I didn't have the money because I was cold calling. So I went to my parents and I said, can you buy this for me for my birthday present? And they said, sure. And I got the course and I implemented what I learned. I didn't get any better as a magician. I didn't learn any more tricks. I just became a marketer. And in 30 days, I became the busiest, most expensive magician in Western New York where I live. So this stuff really works. So I went to the guy who sold it to me, whose name is Dave D., and I said, where'd you learn it? And he said, Dan Kennedy. So I went to Dan, and I told Dan what I was doing as a financial planner, and he said, you shouldn't be cold calling. You shouldn't be mass mailing mass mailing seminar invitations. Write me a really big check, and I'll change your life. I mean, obviously his pitch was a lot better than that. I'm just shortening it. So I went home at this point to my wife. I was married, and I said, honey, I know 12 months ago we got married, 9 months ago we bought our first house, and 3 months ago we had our first baby, and 3 weeks ago you quit your job to be a stay-at-home mom, and I'm making cold calls for a living. But I got to go borrow all this money to go hire this guy Dan to change our life. And she said, didn't you tell me some story about you borrowing money before that didn't work out so well? And I said, yeah, but this time it's different. And she said, no. So I asked her every day for 30 days, and on day 31 she said, you better pray this works. So I hired Dan, and he quadrupled my revenue in the first 2 years. And I went from being 6,699th at my firm to the top 30 in the country. So it worked really, really well, and my wife wasn't complaining anymore. And so that was a good thing. So then I said, Dan, what do I do now? And he said, you start a marketing company and do this for other people. So I started that marketing company, Market Domination LLC, 8 years ago. It started out as just me and one client, and now it's me in an office building full of wonderful team members, and we have hundreds and hundreds of clients all over the world. So along the way, as I mentioned, I wrote 5 Amazon best-selling books. Cutting Edge Marketing Magic, Real Estate Marketing Magic, Financial Advisor Marketing Magic was my first one, Online Marketing Magic, The Facebook Ninja, and my 6th book, which has just been picked up by Morgan James, Podcast Marketing Magic. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We're here to talk about how podcasting can get you financial freedom as a real estate agent, a real estate investor, or both. So some of the challenges you might be facing is, where is your next referral going to come from? Where is your next tenant going to come from? Where is your next investor going to come from? Where's your next client going to come from? And I speak all over the country. Gary's seen me speak at a couple different events, and I ask people all the time, I ask my audiences, where does the majority of your business come from? And most times they usually say things like word of mouth or referrals. And I'll say, well, do you have a system for that? How do you know how many referrals are coming in next month? And they say, no, I don't know. It just comes in on its own. And I said, well, you can't deposit. I might get some referrals next month in the bank, right? They kind of demand cash. So I figured out a way to solve that problem, and that's about what I'm going to share with you right now. So I hope you're taking notes. I hope you're going to take notes, and I hope you start right now. This is the first thing you want to write down. iTunes is not a social network. iTunes is that was my drum roll. iTunes is a media platform. So once you have a podcast on a media platform, what does that make you? It makes you a reporter. And what do reporters do, Gary? They interview people.
Yep.
And as an interviewer, you have the ability to grant everybody what they want most, which is exposure. Mary Kay, Ash of Mary Kay said what people want more than money and sex is recognition. You can give them recognition. If when I was cold calling for a living, I said, hey, I got a great investment idea for you, I got hung up on 99 times out of 100, I got hung up on like 285 times out of 300. But if I said, I have a media appearance for you, all of a sudden it's a whole different story, and everybody jumps and everybody says yes. So let's talk about how you do that and how it works in your business. I'm going to give you a couple examples first that are non-real estate, just to show you what it can do, and then we'll get into the real estate specific examples. So if you're a reporter, you can interview anybody. The sky is literally the limit. This is the Outdoor Boardroom podcast, and this is our client Gary Okino, and he's a golf coach. And what we did was we created this podcast where he interviews Fortune 500 CEOs and really big company CEOs who play golf. And he interviews them on like life and business lessons they learned on the golf course. But during that interview, he asks them 3 magic questions. And I want you to write these down and then figure out later how to translate them to real estate. So the first magic question he asks is, what's your biggest challenge in your golf game? What's your biggest challenge in your golf game is the first question, the first magic question. The second magic question is, what golf course is on your bucket list? And the third one is, what person, name any person alive today, celebrity, athlete, doesn't matter, that you'd want to play that golf course with. So let's pretend our CEO says, I have a vicious slice, St. Andrews is on my bucket list, and I was a Navy SEAL before I became a CEO, so I'd like to play with Bradley Cooper from American Sniper. After the interview, Gary says, would you be open, that was a great interview, thank you so much. Would you be open to me sending you some information on how I could get you and Bradley Cooper together on St. Andrews? What do you think the CEO says? The CEO says, yeah, he does. He says, yeah, send it tomorrow. So then Gary sends him what I call a shock and awe box that we developed for him that tells the CEO about Gary's last golf lesson ever program that's for Fortune 500 CEOs that costs $100,000 a year because Gary flies out on a private jet, picks up the CEO, flies to LA, picks up Bradley Cooper, pays him his $25,000 appearance fee, flies them both to St. Andrews, plays golf with them for 2 days straight, fixes his slice, and then flies them back. And he could never get to those Fortune 500 CEOs any other way. But because we do a multiple-step multimedia marketing campaign to their PR department offering a media appearance for the CEO, they jump and say, yes, of course, Mr. Chambers would love to do Gary's show. And the funny thing is, podcasts are so new that no one has ever asked how many listeners Gary has, which is a really good thing because the first CEO did his show when Gary had 10 listeners. One of them was Gary, and 9 of them were my employees. This is an example of an attorney in a local market wanting referrals. He's an estate planning attorney, and Richard wants referrals from financial advisors, CPAs, and nursing homes. If he just walked into their office and said, can you hand out my business card, they'd throw him out of the office. But because he says, I'd like to interview you for my book on estate planning experts, they say, I would love to do the interview. And the really cool part is we turn your podcast into a book. So not only does the financial advisor or the nursing home or the CPA email all their clients and post on social media about the podcast episode they were on, but when the book comes out, they buy 200 or 300 copies of the book to hand out to all their clients because it's in their self-interest, because they look good to their clients because they were featured in a book. And when those 200 clients read that book and say, oh, I need to get my will updated, who do you think they go to? They go to my client, Richard Vinco. Does that make sense, Gary?
Yep.
So he gets a ton of business. This is one more non-real estate example, then we'll get into all the real estate stuff for you. This is John Cito, who had for years had been trying to get referrals and attention from New Jersey divorce lawyers. He wanted the women who were getting divorced to be his clients, and he wanted to get the referral from the divorce lawyer. And he never got any. He took them out to lunch, he bought them dinner, it didn't matter. He never got any business. But because he's now interviewing them for his podcast and his book, he's got 17 divorce lawyers sending him referrals every single month, and his business is totally transformed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can you see how are your wheels starting to spin about, hey, wait a second, how could this work in my business?
Yep, and we actually have an example. I want to keep you going here, Seth, but at the end, remind me. We have an example. One of our investor agent students in the Kentucky, Southern Ohio, Southern Indiana region, he's already doing podcasts, and every week he's calling me up saying, hey, do we have any agents in so-and-so? Because he has people all over the country, thousands of listeners, and he gets referral business out of it. They say, I want to invest. I'll give you an example. We sent a referral to Montreal from Cincinnati from this agent doing podcasts. That's one example. So remind me later, Seth. I'll give them another example here, too, we already have in place that they can use. So.
Awesome. Love it. Yeah, this is Adam Cruz, who is a realtor in St. Louis. This is his St. Louis Realtor podcast, which is exactly what he's doing. He's doing it to get clients. So it works exactly the same way. He's also doing it to get referrals, because who else would you interview? You'd interview the real estate mafia, right, as we affectionately call them. Hmm. You would interview the mortgage broker, the commercial loan officer. You'd interview the inspector, you'd interview the insurance agents, you'd interview the lawyers, you'd interview everybody else involved in a real estate transaction so that they will tell their clients and prospects about your show, and they will hand out copies of your book, driving a ton of business your way. If you were looking for tenants or investors for your rental properties, income properties, this is Deanne Lane, who's doing the Rental Income Podcast. Same exact thing. If you search, you'll see a number of them. There's the Real Estate Guys, there's Bigger Podcasts, there's Epic Real Estate Investing. There's quite a few real estate investing podcasts, and there's more than enough listeners with 3 billion people in the next 5 years to go around. This is my wonderful wife, Rebecca, and our 3 kids, Max, Ella, and Lily. They are, of course, why I do this every day. The other reason is I think that entrepreneurs are going to be the ones who save the world, not our government. So I make microloans through kiva.org to help third world entrepreneurs start or grow their businesses and get out of poverty. I can't fit them all on this slide because I've been fortunate enough to fund 750 of them. And obviously we donate a percentage of our revenue to them because they need it a whole lot more than I do. And if we raise the standard of living everywhere, it benefits everybody. So let's go into, and you want to write these down, the steps for successful podcasting. The first one is you need a concept and a name. You saw, St. Louis Realtor or Rental Income Kentucky or whatever it is that you are looking for. We're doing one right now about, how to sell your home for top dollar for residential real estate. So it could be how to get top dollar rental income for your income properties. You need interview questions, and I gave you 3 of our magic questions. We have a whole psychologically scripted interview format, but I gave you 3 of them. And then, of course, you got to book your first guest. So let's look at some examples. I'm going to give you a couple quick secrets on how to get your podcast to show up in iTunes. So if I go in iTunes and search for personal branding, the #1 rated podcast is called Life is a Marathon. But yet the real title for Life is a Marathon isn't Life is a Marathon. It's Life is a Marathon, Life Coaching, Self-Esteem, Personal Development, Personal Branding, Positive Thinking. Why do you think it's got such a long title?
Keywords and key phrases.
Exactly. That's what he's trying to rank for. And that's also why his name isn't Bruce Van Horn. It's Bruce Van Horn, life coach, motivational speaker, thought leader, author, blogger, runner. You'll notice those terms also show up in his description and in the descriptions of every show he does, because that's what he's trying to rank for. And that's what iTunes gives you, as you can see, a whole lot of characters for both your name and your podcast name. So there's no reason, it's free, there's no reason not to use them all. I mentioned earlier that a podcast is like a radio show on your phone, so people are expecting it to sound like a radio show. So that means you need a professionally produced introduction to the radio show that has like music and voiceover and sounds like a radio show would sound. And that introduction should do 3 things. It should tell them why they should listen to your show. It should position you as the expert in your niche. And it should tell them the next action you want them to take, like go to my website or call this 800 number, or how they can engage with you further beyond just the show. Now, the #1 question we get about podcasting is, what technology do I use? Do I have to go buy a fancy microphone and a studio set up and spend all this money? And the way we've done our podcast, the answer is absolutely not. You can use freeconferencecall.com, uberconference.com. You can use GoToMeeting. You can use Skype. You can also use an iPhone app called Call Recorder, which is free, and I'll show it to you in a minute. All you have to do is pay for like the minutes of airtime to record the interview. So this is the App Store. If I search for Call Recorder, this is what comes up. It's the first one. This is the one you want. It's one screen. This is the app. They've made it relatively easy. You click buy credits to buy minutes of airtime. As you can see, I have an hour and 2 minutes left. And then this big red button, the only other one you can hit, is the record button. So you hit the record button, and then it dials into the service, and you hit add a contact. You pick the person you're interviewing, and then when you get them on the phone and you say, are you ready to record, you hit the merge call button, and it's recording. And that's it. When you're done, you hang up, and the app will pop up and say, you have a new recording available. What would you like us to do with it? And you say, email it to Seth and his team so that he can edit the audio, or you email it to yourself, whichever one you want to do. And you put your professionally produced introduction on the front of that interview, and that's your podcast. then all that's left is you have to sign up for a hosting service that hosts your show. We use a company called Libsyn.com. I'm not an affiliate. I don't get paid for recommending them. We've used a number of them. It's just the one we happen to like the best. It's really easy to use. It's really user-friendly. And Libsyn will tell iTunes every time you upload an episode so that it shows up in the App Store, so that it shows up on iTunes, so that you have a show. You can also use Libsyn to embed the show on your own website so people can listen to it on your site. And that's your show. And then the other thing you need is then you just transcribe every episode for your book. And of course, you're going to write a couple chapters like an introduction and a conclusion and a couple chapters about how fabulous you are and what you do and how you can help people so that the book has an overall theme to it and so that people who get a copy of the book know what the point is and that how they're supposed to engage with you so you get the business. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. The secret sauce is getting guests. So we have a proven multi-step, multimedia, direct response marketing campaign that gets basically any guest to participate. It doesn't matter what category they're in. As you saw, we've gotten Fortune 500 CEOs to participate. We've gotten authors, speakers, thought leaders, all the way down to local market, mortgage broker, investor, commercial loan officer, and insurance agent. Doesn't matter. It works for anybody. We haven't had a niche it hasn't worked in yet. And then we have a campaign that goes out on social media and via email to get people to listen to the show and to get your guests to share the show. And then we have another direct mail campaign that goes to the guests to get them to buy copies of the book, which we publish for you at our cost. We're not trying to make any money selling books. You can mark them up if you want, but we don't. We charge $3, $4 a book. It just depends on how many copies you order. We want to get as many out there as possible so that you get as many referrals as possible. And then we've also got a campaign written in your guest's voice for every guest you have so that they can send it to their clients with a copy of the book saying, look at me, I'm fabulous, I'm in a book. Here's what the book is about. Here's why I'm thrilled to be in it. And here's why you should talk to Gary because he's the one who wrote the book. So we rewrite that for every single guest you have so that it's as easy for them to send out the book as possible and it generates as much referrals for you as possible. Now, if you wanted that campaign, like if you hire Dan Kennedy, I mean, Gary will vouch for this. If you hire Dan to write direct copy for you, it's $100,000 plus royalties. Obviously, you don't have to pay that. I had another real estate agent hire me a couple weeks ago to write a 3-step direct mail campaign that was a follow-up with investors who attended a real estate seminar. And it was to get them to schedule appointments to come into his office so that he could talk about investing in specific properties. And we charged him $6,000 for that, and he was thrilled because before the campaign he had tried before ours got no results. Not a single real estate investor who came to the seminar would meet with him, and just one deal pays for multiple times our fee. I've seen other marketing firms charge half that, but the good news is everybody on the call, on the webinar, you don't have to pay anything. We just include it for you as part of the package, so it is free. And I hope I'm inspiring you to be our next success story. So whether, and we'll get to questions in a minute, so whether you do a podcast on your own and turn it into a book yourself, I'd love to hear your success stories. If you're already podcasting, Gary's going to give another example of a member who's doing that. Or if you want to use our services and have us do all the work for you, of course. Gary told me, he twisted my arm, I had to put together a killer deal for his folks. But before I show you what that is, I want to just ask that, if all this did for you was get you in front of your dream referral sources and prospects, would it be worth it? If all it did was get your book done without you having to write it and made you an authority figure in your marketplace, is it worth it? And if all it does is get you new clients and new investors, is it worth it? And I have to believe the answer to all three of those questions is yes. So here's how our podcast marketing magic service works. Last month we talked about Facebook and social media. our podcast marketing magic program, we create the podcast for you. We create the professional introduction. We produce it in-house. We find the guests for you. We do the research, and then we execute our multiple-step multimedia marketing campaign to get them to want to be in your show. We write the interview questions for you following our proven format that's worked for 40 shows. We edit the audio. We upload it to iTunes for you. You don't have to worry about any of that. We also will transcribe and edit every episode you do. And my publishing company that I started to publish all my clients' books, because we were referring that business out and they were the other publishing companies were charging so much money. And I said, I know I can get these books cheaper. Let's just do it ourselves and not charge a markup. So we do the graphic design, layout, and publishing of your book. We market and promote the book for you. We provide the marketing materials that go to the interview subjects, and then we provide marketing materials for them to send out to their clients to get them to come to you. So all of this works together to drive a ton of business your way. All done for you. The only thing you've got to do is the actual interview itself, because it's got to be your voice on the air. Other than that, we do everything. Last month, we showed you our Facebook Ninja campaign for realtors, which we normally sell at $9.97 a month, but Gary made me give you a $4.97 half-off deal. We'll make that offer again tonight. That's still available. And then normally, our podcast marketing magic is $3,000 a month, and in about 4 months, you would have a podcast and a book. You'll have both the podcast will be done right away. It takes a few months to have the book done because you have to do enough interviews to make the book, but we will cut that price in half. And for $14.97 a month, you get both our Facebook Ninja program taking care of your social media, and you get the podcast, and you get the book, and you will have a ton of new business. Plus, I will throw in a couple killer bonuses. One, I will give you a month free of a virtual assistant to work with you and help you get stuff done. Because Gary did, 100 transactions a year over at Keller Williams without an admin or without an assistant. Not all of us are as good as Gary. So we'll let you have a month free of our friend Davin Michaels' 123 Employees Virtual Assistant Services. And I also teach a marketing seminar every single month on all of our cutting-edge marketing magic. So not just podcasting, not just social media, but everything we do for our clients. What's working, what's not working. And we keep you on the cutting edge, and we teach you how to do it. And that's normally $2,364. But because you're coming through Gary, I will give you a year's worth of that for free as well. All of this information and all of the details are at ultimatemarketingmagician.com/real estate. I'm going to let Gary tell the example of the member we've got who's already podcasting, and then we'll take questions.
Thanks, Seth, and thanks again also for being here. And hopefully everybody took notes. And for everybody, remember, particularly the newer folks, if this is your first webinar, if you didn't get to write everything down, remember you're going to get a link tomorrow with the recording of this.
Yes, I know I went fast.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, you see, that's the thing is we're used to doing it, and I realize as also being a student what comes natural because we've done it a million times. Repetition is the mother of success. Other people are just starting, so that's one of the reasons why we record these. So folks, remember, tomorrow you'll get a link for the recording so you can replay it and slow it down and rewind it and pause it and all kinds of neat stuff, particularly on those critical slides. But a couple of examples here. I actually have 3 of them, and the first one is one I was alluding to earlier. So he's one of our students. I don't want to mention names because I haven't actually spoken to him about this, although he may be on the webinar. I know exactly who he is. He currently does podcasts, and what he realized right away is he wasn't just getting listeners in his region, which again is Kentucky, Southern Ohio, and Southern Indiana. He was getting people from all across the country and Canada, and also outside the country. And then he started getting people emailing him, responding to his podcast, saying, "Hey, if you seem like you know what you're doing this podcast, I'd like to work with you. Do you work in?" I think he sent out probably 300 referrals just this year alone, all over the place. So what he realizes is, no, I don't work in Salt Lake City, Utah. I don't work in Orlando, Florida. I work in Indianapolis and then Louisville, Kentucky, and those areas. And he called me up and I said, "We've got students in all those places." He started sending referrals out in getting referral fees from these transactions, from these referrals you send into other investor agent students. So what I'm telling you guys is don't just think. It's very easy for us as human beings to think inside the box. When you learn a new technique like this, always write down, how can I use this? How can I utilize this in my business? So even if you're not an expert, you don't have to be an expert. You can interview experts. And that's exactly what a lot of people have done. So, now which is going to have me jump to the second thing here. So number one is, yes, you can generate, not just local, but referral business from using podcasts. You can get referral income coming in on a regular basis. But the second thing is this: even if you're not an expert, we have students in KW who've never bought a single investment property before, and yet, you guys have heard me mention her name. Her name is Kelly O'Keefe. She actually teaches investors how to invest. She does a classroom setting that we teach as part of our program. So for those of you who haven't done your first workshop yet, once you do your workshop, we introduce you to the classroom technique, which is awesome. And in any case, she's perceived as being the expert because she teaches the subject. So what I'm going to tell you is, when you start acquiring clients and they buy their first property, they buy their second property, buy their third property, they do a flip, they do a rental, ask them to do an interview and tell them that you're going to use it on a podcast that's going to help other people realize that, yes, that they can invest in real estate too. And it does two things. Number one is it helps these guys feel like they really do know something, and they're willing to help you because you've helped them. You can use that to send out and market it, via other, all these other online techniques to market the podcast that Seth mentioned earlier, to get other people to call you, because you're the investor agent and you're representing these other investors who are actually out there making a living out of this. They're buying rentals, they're doing flips, okay? So you will get some local business out of it. And really, the other thing too is you want to turn these podcasts into books. And what you do is you take the recording, you get it transcribed. I know I do this with Seth, and part of his program, he actually does the transcription for you.
Yep.
There are companies to do that, but just use this service. Then you produce your book, and your book becomes a calling card. You're no longer using a regular business card. It just has your picture and your name and your number. Now you've got a tool, a book that has recorded interviews with a number of investors in there, and you can interview lenders, you can interview home inspectors, you can interview appraisers, anything that would help your clients. Interview these folks. You get everything transcribed. Everyone becomes a new chapter in your book. Now you got something of value to give to people, something that allows you to demonstrate expertise and knowledge in this field over and above anything else that any other agent is doing. Okay. Now the third thing I've noticed is there are other people using podcasts, obviously, and one of them is one of our top KW guys. His name is Pat Highban, and he has his own podcast now. He's very successful with it, and he was a former KW #1 agent years ago, and he interviewed me this past August, and that's what got me really interested in podcasts. That's why I went and looked for Seth, because Seth and I have known each other for a couple of years, and he's helped me with Facebook before, and it worked. So, in any case, Pat actually makes money on his podcast and selling his books. He has books, and he sells them because he's on a podcast, and people go look up his book on Amazon.com and buy his book. So you actually can put your book on Amazon.com.
We publish it for you. So it will be both published physically, and we'll publish it. We'll sell you copies cheaper than Amazon will sell you copies. But it will also be available. They can buy the physical version on Amazon, or they can buy the Kindle ebook version on Amazon. We take care of all of that.
Yeah. So what I just described to you guys, I brought my panel back over. I slid my panel over so I can look at the question box. I want to look for questions from some of the students on the line here, because I just gave you 3 real-world examples of how it's being used right now, all 3 by KW agents. Okay. Now, some of you are not. I know you're not, are KW agents, and that's okay. We teach anybody and everybody. We have an open arm, open heart, open mind philosophy on training. Obviously, I'm not actively trying to recruit you. We just want to show you what we're all about here. So, of those three examples, somebody give me a question. Let me know, okay, Gary, how can I use this in Nashville, Tennessee, Orlando, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, um, you know, Los Angeles, Sacramento, the places I've been in the last few months. Let me know, because you've got the only person alive who's been nominated 3 years in a row to be Marketer of the Year, and he's on this webinar live and free to show to give you guys answers, allow to ask questions. So while we're waiting for that, Seth, of the three examples I gave you, um, do you have any you can elaborate on? And I know you're from Buffalo, but I know you also travel everywhere, because you and I actually, what was interesting is we ran into each other beginning of October in all places, Austin, Texas. I was there for my KW trainer training, and you were there for another conference, and we happened to be staying at the same hotel, spotted each other at breakfast, and then and ironically, I was just thinking, I really wish I could see Seth, and lo and behold, you pop up. Talk
You've
about the
got
power.
magical powers.
Oh my gosh! But any other examples you can think of, Seth? So people who are like brand new, something that would make this feel very real to them, and like, hey, I can do that too, kind of thing. Anything that comes to
Well,
mind?
sure.
Or
I mean, if you think about it, whether you're brand new or if you're brand new, you're part of what you're trying to do right away is build your network.
mm-hmm.
And this gets that completely done for you. You don't have to necessarily waste time at Chamber of Commerce meetings or BNI or any of that stuff. And this makes you not just another real estate agent. This makes you the authority in your marketplace. And think about it, if your prospect or your referral source is meeting with you're not the only agent they know, and if they've got 4 other business cards on their desk in a book, I mean the guy with the book wins every time because it's the ultimate business card. And if you're leading first by adding value to them, by giving them exposure, by putting them on your show and putting them in your book, you're night and day from any other person they might run into, because no one else is doing it in your marketplace.
Yep, that's right.
And I got a question that came in. It said, I'm going to go back a slide. They asked, why does it say for 4 months? And the reason is we ask for a 4-month commitment because usually it takes 3 to 4 months to do enough interviews to get the book done. We guarantee you we'll get you 4 interviews every month, and depending on how long the time frame the interviews go, you may need 10 to 20 interviews to make a book that's long enough to be a real book. This isn't like a 20-page ebook. This is like a bookstore book. So you can do it faster than that depending on how fast you do the interviews, but if you do 1 a week, on average, it takes 3 to 4 months, so we ask for a 4-month commitment. I had one client who took a week off of work, did 27 interviews in 1 week, and got his book done in a week. Past performance, no guarantee of future success. So, we had 27 people respond to the campaign in the first week, which is not normally normal.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we say, but I mean, if you do 1 a week, which is a reasonable amount of time, 20 to 30 minutes, everyone on the call can find half an hour or 20 minutes a week to do an interview. It's 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
You're going to get results sooner than that because remember, you're going to be interviewing all these people, so you're going to be building relationships with them. So you'll get referrals in business before the book comes out because the show will air first. But the tidal wave of business comes when the 20 people who are on your show are all handing out 200 copies of your book to everybody they know.
Right. Well, I can tell you from personal experience, when I was an interviewee before for other people's podcasts, I absolutely did multiple people calling me, emailing me because they heard me on the podcast. It was amazing. And a couple other things too is, so for those of you who are listening to this and the wheels are starting to spin, the light bulb's going off, think about this. Let's say you interview a lender. Let's say you interview a home inspector. Let's say you interview a contractor who's used to working with flippers. Okay.
Yep.
What you do is you interview these guys and you tell them, hey, you're going to be part of a book. Number one. Number two is I'm going to give you a recording of this podcast, and you can put this on your own website. So the lender would put it on his own website. The contractor should have a website if he's any good, and so forth and so on. So they can promote themselves as, look, the consumer's impression is this guy's good enough to be interviewed. He must be really good. He's going to get business out of this, okay? And when he does, who's he going to refer them to when they need an agent to invest? He's going to refer them to you guys because you're the one who set them up on the podcast and helped them be
Exactly.
part
You
of it.
can even burn the MP3 file that we give you to a
Yep.
CD and mail him a hard copy, and then he may say, "Hey, listen, can I have 50 copies of that CD? I want to send them out." So you get
Yep.
another free marketing campaign in there for free.
Yep. So here's another question, Seth. This is from Carolyn. Carolyn says, "Do you have to obtain a release? Do you have to obtain release forms from the person you're interviewing since you are selling a book and making a profit?"
We provide you with that.
Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if is there a difference? Let's say you're not selling the book. I would think you would still need a release because you're basically printing interview material. You know. So I was
Yes, correct.
okay.
Right.
Excuse me.
We have people who have done it without it, and it's never been an issue. None of their guests have ever complained about, "Hey, you sold a book and I didn't make any money from it." Because generally, people, when you say, "Hey, do you want to be in my book?" no one ever says, "Hey, am I getting paid for this?" But yeah, we provide you with that to cover all your bases.
Right. Yep. Another thing I've seen too is once you can actually do multiple books. You know, um, and once you get the first one out there, it's easy to get endorsements. So if you're actually at say a giant event like Mega Camp or Family Reunion or any of the other Fusion Con, any of the other um, conferences, if you get additional training that you go to, um, look for the leaders of that organization. They're always accessible because they're always out and about because they want to mingle and meet people and shake hands. Take your book with you and show them and say, look, would you be willing to give me an endorsement? I've read your book, I like it, and I think you're great at what you do. And I've read your material, but I've got my own book now. What do you think? And don't be afraid to ask for endorsements. When you start getting endorsements from other
Yes, I would
people,
be happy to write the back cover blurb for
yeah.
anybody on the call.
Oh my gosh, and it's amazing because I learned from and I just sometimes I call myself like a Forrest Gump type person because I put myself out there. I put one foot in front of the other. I actually take action, and things don't always work out, but for the most part, they if I didn't do anything, they certainly wouldn't work out. So I'm not afraid anymore to ask people for stuff like that. And I've never, Seth, in your experience, have you ever had anybody just flat out say no when you're asking for
I,
stuff like that?
I haven't, because usually the most successful people are also the most generous because they remember what it was like when they started out and what it was like to get to where they are. And I mean, I've had some amazing people, write blurbs and endorsements and testimonials for my books. And hey, if I write one for you on the back, now you can say, look, the 6-time best-selling author endorsed my book. So I'm
Yeah,
happy to do that for everybody, assuming your book is good, of course. And if we're producing it, I know it will be.
yeah, there you go. Okay, well, I tell you what. Um, If you could, we've got a few minutes to go here, guys. So if you've got questions, get them in. We've got about 8 minutes to go, and I want to make sure Seth has a little bit of time to wrap things up. And Seth, also, if you could please, I know you're a busy guy, but would you mind sharing your contact information before we're done here so people can reach out to you? Because I think we have several students in our program who are already our top producers. They have teams, and I almost promise you these guys are going to want to take advantage of this stuff. So, by the way, here's another question. This is from Tyler. Hey, Tyler, how you doing, buddy? This sounds great. However, I know I can't afford to do this for the next few months. Is this deal for one time only? So he's asking us what you're offering. Um,
Does the discount go away?
yeah.
Uh, I'll tell you what, Tyler, there is my email address. If you shoot me an email, I will hold you a spot. But normally, yeah, it goes away in a week. But if you shoot me an email and you come back in a couple months, we'll obviously still be working with Gary and still providing content for you. So I will do my best to keep it open.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing that. Here's because I know I'm just one of your many clients, and real estate's just one of the industries that you're in. So let's see. Here's another one. I'm not ready to do the program yet, but I'm wondering how long this offer. Oh, we just answered that question. Okay. Um,
Yeah, you got to send me an email and tell me, hey, I was on the call with Gary, save me a spot, and as long as you keep your word and show up later, I will do that.
as a matter of fact, if they email you, Seth, is there a way for them to get any? I know we got the recording of this webinar tonight. They'll have that, but something. I don't know if you have any free reports or. I know sometimes I
Yep.
used to write what's
I
called
will
a
give
manifesto.
them, if they shoot me an email, I will give them a copy. I will give them a download tomorrow of Podcast Marketing Magic, of my new book, where I walk through this process and I interview 15 of the top podcasters in the world and say, give me your secrets. How did you do it? How did you grow? How do you make money doing this? So I will give them all copies of the book if they shoot me an email. And the email that is on the screen is seth@marketdominationprogram.com.
Well, there you go, guys. You got now you got access to a free book from Seth. So I feel like this is Seth's Christmas present to me for being a good guy.
It is.
So,
It is. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
well, thank you, yeah, thank you for doing all you've done for me over the last couple of years. I mean, it's definitely done wonders, and I know a lot of people. And I will tell you this, Seth, in the defense of the agents here, because it's Christmas and it's the end of the year, and a lot of them are,
I understand that.
they're fearful that January is going to be, not very productive. However, the ones who have been in the program for a while don't worry about that because they know when you work with investors that cash flow doesn't dry up like it does with the residential business. But a lot of them are pretty new.
Exactly.
So we try to think of ways we can help them as much as we can. So I appreciate your willingness to do that. Let's see, what else do we have here? Well, here's kind of an interesting question. You mentioned, Gary, you have been an interviewee. How do I get to be an interviewee? How do I get to be interviewed from other podcasters?
We can help you with that too. So depending on the podcast you want to be on or the market you're in, we can help get you booked on other shows, just like we've helped Gary not only with his own podcast, but with getting him booked on other shows as well.
Matter of fact, there's one coming up here at the end of the month, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I just got that scheduled. While I'm offered, I'm taking 2 weeks off the road so I can visit my family and do some snow skiing. But I am going to be, so I won't be teaching, but I'll be kind of working behind the scenes in a few hours a day. So I'll be accessible, obviously, to everybody. But so I think we scheduled that one right in that time frame, which is perfect. Okay, let's see, Seth. Any final thoughts? Anything you can think of to help these guys? We're at the end of the year. You're a pretty successful dude, and we're grateful to have you on. But anything you can share that would help these guys feel like I can, just keep them inspired. I can do this and hang in there till they get through the first.
If you do this, you'll set yourself apart from everybody else in your marketplace, and you'll make 2016 your best year ever because no one else is doing this. I mean, there's no competition right now.
Right. Yep. And
there will be soon, but there isn't right now. So you might as well be the first one there.
Yep. And what's amazing is I know when you talk about the technology and the way it's getting ready to be propagated more prolifically. How's that? Propagated more prolifically.
Say that 5 times.
Yeah. If you just look at the history of technological innovations, the people who jumped in the earliest made the most money. And the perfect example, of course, is the internet. And here we hear, now we know for a fact that podcast people are going to be able to listen to them just like they have satellite radio in their cars.
Apple's basically trying to kill terrestrial radio.
Yep. It's amazing. So, and think about everybody who commutes. Most people nowadays are really not listening to traditional radio. They're listening to books on audio. They're listening to podcasts. It's just amazing, So, okay, let's see if there's any more. I think I got through all the questions, and if I missed a question, I really apologize. I'm trying to make sure I've got them all here.
Just shoot it to me via email, and I'll answer it. Not a problem.
Okay. Well, Seth, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas
to
you and your family and all your friends up there. And I will see you. Are you going to be at the Infusion conference in early March?
No, because I'm at CEO Space, but if you are either at Traffic and Conversion or the Kennedy Super Conference in February and April, I will be at both of those.
Okay, I might see that. I know we're going to be working together here closely anyways the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say your summit. We got stuff. We actually have a call scheduled for tomorrow.
That's right. So good. Okay, so here's one last question. Is this something you should practice for going live with guests?
we're going to practice with you. So we will interview you for our show. I mean, I have like 2.2 million listeners, but I will interview you first so that you get used to it, and then you will feel comfortable. So we have taken that into account, and we will cover that with you.
Okay, good. Excellent question. Well,
Yeah, that is a good question.
And I know for me, honestly, a lot of what I've done, Seth, and maybe you can testify to this too, is a lot of it is unscripted and totally unfiltered. So people are getting the actual
You go off
flow.
on a tangent, somebody answers a question, and it gives you another idea of another question, and you just have a conversation.
Yep. And the reason I like that is it's authentic, it's genuine,
Yes.
and there's no better way to learn than just let it, just let the truth come out. Let reality have its way. So, yeah. Okay, well, we're starting to get a lot of thank yous and awesome. So thanks again, Seth, for doing this.
My pleasure.
I'll hit the stop recording button here, and we'll get this downloaded and uploaded and get it in your hands before the end of the day.
Yep. Send me a copy.
You're welcome. For everybody else on the webinar here, guys, no webinar next week. So if you're wrapping up Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. If you celebrate Kwanzaa, happy Kwanzaa. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. I wish you all the best of the rest of the year for you and your families. Enjoy your time, and don't worry. There are people out there who are willing to help you. I know I've enjoyed that myself, and Seth's a big part of it too. So thanks again to everybody, and I will see you I think it's the Monday or Tuesday after Christmas on the next webinar. Okay, good night.